And I wanted to ask you because it's right up front. You're beginning with some graphic medical detail, and that doesn't stop throughout. And this is, you know, there's this kind of floating idea that I don't think anybody has a definitive grasp on of what's appropriate for children, what's not appropriate for children. You're talking science, you're talking real stuff. But you're also, I mean, the first sentence, which I love, by the way, great hook about, I'm going to butcher it. I'd never seen a kid's face melt off or a kid's skin melt off, which fantastic. Right away, especially as a child, you had my rapt attention. Yes, go on. I want to see the skin melt. And there are lots of details. You're not holding back from explaining all the many wonderfully terrible things that can happen to a human body over the course of a lifetime. Where did you decide? How did you decide what was appropriate and what was not appropriate, or was it if it's in the realm of science, it's all appropriate? What was your approach?
Despite all the graphic detail that is in the book, a lot of it is not. So there you are right. There is a lot of science and a lot of disease that is really icky. And I actually chose very carefully, and much of it is not there that started there because I didn't end up deciding it was appropriate. And you're right, there are descriptions, and I'll just give an example, the necrotic fingers. With some of the diseases, because you can't get blood flow to the very ends of your body because your body is all clamped down, of course, the ends of your fingers and toes and the end of your nose can lose the blood flow, and then the tissue turns dark and dies, and it's called necrosis. And so that's a description that I used, and then at the end of the book, there's a guide about the infectious diseases, and I talk about the symptoms that can happen, and I describe what the word necrotic means. And I had to choose my wording very carefully because I didn't want it to be too icky, and because these are not doctors, and I didn't want people to get squeamish, and I wanted it to be for all readers. And so though there is a good amount of description in there, I actually took out a lot. And there's going to be a curriculum guide. It's being developed now. I'm developing it with a teacher who is very facile at this, and she's excellent. And she sent me some of her preliminary work, and she had photographs. And she actually had photographs of necrotic or fingers that had blackened tips. And it's one thing to read about blackened tips of the fingers, but it's quite another to see the picture. So she and I talked about it, and that picture won't be there because it's easier to read about something. It's a newspaper. I do the newspaper, read it every day, cover to cover, but I don't really watch the news. And I can read something in the newspaper, and it is has a different effect on me than if I were to see that clip being played on the news. And so same for the description in the book. I tried to keep it as ungory but interesting as I could, but it's interesting to hear that it comes across a lot of it as a little on the gory side.
I think some of it might just be, I never know how much of this is just me, which I never want to assume that the reading public is like me. That's the first step toward writing terribleness, is an assumption like that. But I do notice that there's, well, obviously part of what motivated you to write this is these kids have got this Greek mythology down, and that's great. That's really going to come in handy if you're playing, the Immortals or Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You are going to know who those characters are, and how wonderful that's going to be for you if you go on to write your own novels. You can call the alligator people the Elysians, and how clever you are. You've got your Greek history down. But that is not as practical and as useful as what you're offering as warning signs for what could be going wrong, things that everyone should be aware of. Why do you think that I'm not going to ask you to address the ills of an entire society, but why do you think that people get so squeamish about this hard medical stuff that, that like it, don't like it, most of us don't like it, is stuff we need to be aware of, is stuff we need to be taken seriously. Hopefully this pandemic certainly has had the impact on me and will have the impact on other people that, oh, hey, we're taking health for granted, and we should be paying more attention. So hopefully that will have an impact. But why do you think people are so reticent to discuss this stuff, to know this stuff, this practical information, as opposed to the fantastical?
You know, I'm hoping that it's just a matter of making it interesting, making it fun, making it an adventure story. I'm hoping. You are right about that. So some of it, I thought, this is just going to be too boring. So there's the gory end, which, you know, makes you squeamish, but for kids sometimes that's a little bit exciting too. And I tried not to make it too gory. But then there's parts that I thought I don't want them to get too bored. Like, for instance, stroke. Super important concept. Stroke. What can you see and identify stroke? Because you only have a certain amount of time after someone has a stroke to get them to the emergency room, to get them the treatment that they need to open up the blood vessels to the blood to the brain, for the blood to the brain. And so stroke is super important for everybody to know about. So I put that in the book. And I thought, how am I going to make this not boring? So there's the two sides to it. So I am hoping that by making things fun and interesting, that that you can get kids to say, this is kind of cool. And I'm hoping that they're not going to, that those parts will hold them, and they're not going to think that some of the other parts are boring, like the stroke, which is in there, and it goes pretty fast, but it is in there, how to recognize a stroke.
That makes sense to me. Well, hopefully everyone's going to read The Antidote, obviously, and you're going to write sequels, and more people are going to write more medically focused stuff, and we're going to turn this ship around.